for being part of the symposium. And of course, you've been on other shows. People can obviously watch that, where there has been Mediator experiences when Tsisana has been there. So she'll be spoken about herself there. That's going to happen. But Tsisana, what you need to do is maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. Then I'll just talk about the symposium that we are doing, and we'll take it from there. Yeah, Tsisana?
So I just say very shortly that, first of all, thank you very much for what you are doing. This is very valuable work. And I just heard from the colleague before me that you extended the circle of people who are included in this conversation and these discussions. And this is very important for future of mediation. I'm sure about this. And thank you for inviting me. And the topic is very interesting. And I myself, I did a lot to implement mediation in Russia, as you and your audience know probably. And now I'm continuing my activities as international mediator and expert in mediation, ADR and ODR worldwide, but except of Russia. Yes, and I'm now splitting my time mostly between Europe and Israel. And it's a very interesting work what I'm doing now, consulting and mediating, especially for big projects and for startup projects. And also consulting people for their kind of community problems. And that's all what I want to say now.
But Tsisana, Russia also needs you. You can't give up on Russia. They also need your valuable work. Okay, so this is what we are doing. Mediation legislation, the how, what, when, where, which, who, why of it. And you, of course, are going to take us through, answer some of the questions, maybe raise some more questions. Let's see how it goes. So, Tsisana, this is what it is. Maybe what I can tell people is that, which of course you also may not get time to go to, but please go to mediatorvikram.com. It makes life easier for me to put out information so that people can watch the various things that are happening. This is a new series I've started, Tsisana. It's called Magic in Mediation. Ken Cloak is writing a book which is going to come out later this year called Magic in Mediation. So I said, let's do a series around it. So his episode is already out there, and there's another one from India, Mr. Panchu. His episode is there. So these are going to be the series is going to happen. I mean, keep having. I think there are 2 next week that I'm doing with Michael Lang and Andrea. So this is what it is. And of course, information is there about what to work and everything. World Mediation Circle is where what we were talking about, that creating that circle and all. There's lots of, I won't get into that. I won't take away your time on that, but activities are there. So Tsisana, please, mediation legislation.
Yes, thank you. So probably I will start a little bit from distance. Mediation, and you often use this notion toward mediation that it's a mindset. And this is what I believe very profoundly, that really you can't be mediator without mediation mindset. And this is one of the main, probably the stones on which mediation should lie, and as a professional activities and mediators activities should rely. But at the same time, we have to admit it, that human history has shown us that this ability to find, to conciliate in good meaning of this word, and to find solution instead of being in the conflict, and instead of using aggression or violence when there is conflict. Violence, I mean, from very wide spectrum of possibility. of violence. So this is not the feature of human beings. And also we can say that probably we humans are only creatures on the earth who used to kill each other without any real reason, without any real purpose. So aggression and violence is a part of human beings, and it's very difficult to find this balance. And it's not that this is given, that the humanity will be, that the mediative mindset will be spread, that all humans will be like mediators, or at least will follow some principles of mediation, which are part of mediative mindset, just to keep us as a human civilization. And probably today we reached the point where this is one of the main problems. I don't know if many of citizens of the earth, they realize this or not, but this is very, very complicated moment in the history of humanity. And probably I'm not exaggerating this, because there is a lot of authors who say that, and academics who say that we live in better and more peaceful and less bloody times than it was ever. And probably statistically, it's like this. And I just recently I visited one of my friends, and we had this discussion about this. I said, yes, of course, I hope that I can get to my home, not being killed, from you to my home. And this is an advantage of our times. But for the rest, I don't know. There is a question. And we have to understand that really this is not something which we have to get as granted and we take as granted. Human beings, they have to be very cautious and conscious about this, and very pragmatic and rational. And I think that today, having in mind that mediation needs mediative mindset and real deep understanding of mediation philosophy. And especially I want to emphasize on this, that mediation philosophy, not even like intermediation like it was in ancient times and in medieval times, when we have first maybe records about mediation as mediation, but in modern understanding of mediation, because today's challenges are different challenges. The complexity of the world is different. And probably you know that about 10 days ago, the group of high tech and IT corporations, they initiated the open letter, because they felt already alarming letter asking that all around the globe, all studies, laboratory studies, and all work to advance artificial intelligence has to be stopped. And so this is something which shows, for me, it's not so promising, because we can't be sure that everyone will hear this real, scream. And they are probably very late with this alarming action. But we are already there. And that's why probably, I don't say that mediation is panacea for or something like this, but at the same time, tools like mediation will help, hopefully, as more people will and you are saying about teaching people skills of mediation and so on. And I hope that we are on the same page about this. I again have to say that without mediative mindset, skills are useless. It will work only mechanically, but it won't give you the sustainable, real result which we are looking for probably. And when we are saying about this, in different parts of the world, there is a different approach to implementation of mediation. There are many parts of the world which are considered as the parts where mediation even was used much earlier than in, for instance, in Western world. But that's why I'm saying about modern mediation, because when mediation met with the Western culture, it went through some changes. And these changes, it wasn't like because only of Western culture, but it was also changes which responded to the challenges which the world had due to the globalization. And mostly mediation was developing after the Second World War. We can say at the beginning of 20th century, somewhere in 30s and 40s, but mostly in the second part of the 20th century. And indeed, there is lots of countries where today still there is no real legislation for mediation. But at the same time, we can say, I can't say that mediation flourishes anywhere in the world. We have to be very sincere with ourselves about this. Maybe it's painful, it's not so easy to admit this, but it's like this. But if we compare between each other, so we can say that in common law countries, like United States, in UK, mediation is much more used than in some other countries. At the same time, what we see that in Europe, it took quite a while, but at the same time, there is already, we can say that maybe it's more in social field that mediation is used. Social field, some non-for-profit governmental projects, but at the same time, it's used. So, and we know that, for instance, in Europe, there was directive for mediation, and it helped at least to make mediation more visible. This was one of the biggest things. But we also have to look at it that before the directive was adopted, which was a consequence of what was more or less almost in most of the European countries today, we have, at a certain extent, we have special mediation law. But before this, we had the Mediator's Code of Conduct adopted by the European Union. And this was very helpful. This was one of the first steps to towards mediation as profession. And we can discuss it, that is mediation profession, or mediation is kind of assistance which can't be called profession. But I have to insist that today, if we really want that mediation will play the role of some social tool which can really bring some difference for better, we have to look at it as profession. And one of the followers of Frankfurt School of Thinking, And Jürgen Habermas, it was probably about 20 years ago, he said that humanity reached the point when the most natural kinds of human relations and assistance, I'm not quoting, I'm just trying to give you the meaning of this, that humanity reached the point when these kind of activities now we are buying as services, like psychologists, like psychotherapists. And I can say that mediation is more or less the same if we will look at it like it was in past. But today we really did a lot of effort to make mediation something which is significant in these given conditions which humanity is now. And probably if we lost ability, or our society lost ability to solve the problems or to provide assistance to each other in these natural relations, so probably we have to help some professions which have to become a substitute of this, because otherwise we won't be able to survive. That's why professionalization of mediation is very important. And to make mediation professional, so you have to make it, you have to develop it as institute. And if you have it as institute, it has to be regulated. At the same time, regulation and mediation is sometimes sounds a little bit paradoxical way, very contradictory, but at the same time, we still have to be very pragmatic, and we have to understand that if we want it to develop, we have to regulate it. At the same time, bearing in mind that we have to try and we have to do as much as we can to regulate as it's less as possible. So for me, legislation, first of all, if we take legislation as wider understanding of it, not real only the law which regulates something. So the professional code of conduct for mediators is very important. And it's very important, especially for not only for mediators, but also for the society, especially in the societies when mediation is new for these societies, completely new. When society does not know what to expect from mediators, they need this code of conduct at least to see, because we know what you have to expect from, for instance, from doctor, from lawyer, but you don't know exactly what, I mean, the average citizen, he doesn't know what to expect from mediator. And he can easily confuse it, which can play sometimes as beneficial to mediation, when mediator behaves the way how he has to behave, and he plays the real role of mediator. But sometimes it happens that something what is not mediation is presented like mediation. So this is very important from my point of view. Also depends from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. As I said before, that there are many countries which still doesn't have special regulation. For instance, United States, they have Uniform Mediation Act. But at the same time, it gives some guidelines, but we can't say that this is a law which regulates really mediation. There is no any special law in UK, for instance. There was some amendments, there was some additions to the civil law, which helped, for instance, to develop the mandatory mediation and so on. And now for small claims, they use mediation widely. But at the same time, there is no some law, special law about mediation. But in some jurisdictions, sometimes, because in jurisdictions which I already mentioned, there is kind of more free will of lawyers, of the society. Society, it's very important, is the state for the human being, or human being is for the state. This is very important principle for me. Being from Soviet Union and from Russia, I know what it means. So, and especially my Russian experience, and when we started to do these efforts to implement mediation in Russia, one of the first efforts, at least we started, and it took us, it took me more than 8 years from the moment when we really started to implement mediation, and from the moment when we applied with the first draft of the law to till the moment when the law was adopted. But there was a lot of critics, especially from abroad, from my colleagues, from my friends, from people who already had big experience in implementing mediation in other countries, that why should you adopt the law? First, you have to develop the practice, which I completely agree. I share this position, this view. But at the same time, this doesn't work for countries like Russia. First of all, we have to see that from where you are coming when you want to, when you try to implement mediation. In some countries, there is a real strive for changes, for improvement of the real access to justice, not justice like court, like day in the court, but justice like real dispute resolution. And this was the case, for instance, in the United States, where one of the leading groups who helped to implement mediation, it was judges, federal judges, who really did a lot for this. And they had this capacity to do such things. For instance, in Russia, judge, even if he is very smart judge, very knowledgeable, well educated, even open-minded, and he sits in front of you and he talks to you and he says, yes, it would be great to have it. But at the moment when you say, okay, let's start maybe to refer for mediation in your court, to explain the parties, at least about mediation, not even referring, but at least to explain it. They say, no, I'm not allowed. You have to show me where in the law, in civil code, we have this kind of possibilities for judge to behave, to act like this. So this was one of the first reasons, maybe, to make it possible for judges, without this argument, to have some kind of legislation. This is one thing. Also, what is very important, the society itself, if there is no special legislation, they will say, okay, It's not in our legislation, and it's in the society which does not follow the laws, but at the same time, they need legislation. They don't believe to something new. So these are the things, I'm saying it maybe quite briefly now, but this is very important to understand from where you are coming when you are talking about mediation and legislation. And there is no one recipe for everyone. And even in European Union, which in European Union, they had this directive, which was the basis. And we can say that maybe they were in better situation because they had some frame in which they could already work out, develop their own national domestic mediation laws. But at the same time, as we see, the laws are very, very different. And the consequences are very different. And for instance, Italy, which was kind of their decree and the mediation law, which became like compulsory mediation law, it created the situation where the revolution of lawyers almost happened, and it was really crisis. In Netherlands, where the mediation and referral programs due to Machteltpel and the judges who were really very much involved in this, it helped to get great results. And they were one of the last who adopted the law. But at the same time, I have to mention this is also very important. It's not about legislation, but that at the beginning of new institutions, implementation and development, personalities are very important because they are the main fuel for this. And as soon as this fuel does not exist anymore, or it doesn't take such an active role in it, it can little bit become less and less. And when we are talking about mediation legislation, indeed, there are some things which are very important. This is confidentiality, which has to be protected from all aspects of it, and which is very important for real deep result of mediation, because if confidentiality is not protected, then it's a big question. Enforcement is also very important, but with this I have some ambiguity, but it depends. In the beginning, in countries like Russia, for instance, enforcement is very important, but you have to be very careful what kind of mechanisms of enforcement you will use. Because sometimes these enforcement mechanisms, they can provoke and they can create a new dangers of new corrupted schemes. Like we witnessed now when the last amendments to mediation law was adopted in Russia, and that notaries can just seal the agreement and it becomes enforceable, then there was a lots of problems with this, because you still have to know who was this mediator, and was he a mediator who helped parties and who signed this mediation agreement. And why I'm saying that enforcement, it's for the first period of time. We don't know how long this period will be. But at the same time, because when we are talking about mediation, enforcement, if the mediation as procedure was carried proper way, then there should not be questions about enforceability. And that's case of, that's what my experience says, that more than 85% of mediations are enforced without any problems. And sometimes, and it's also one of the duties of mediator, to advise parties that their mediative agreement, it's part of just life, and life conditions are changing. And so if something changes, they can always get back, ask for assistance, and can try to renegotiate and revise. But at the same time, this is very important that they will have this real will and common sense to reach the agreement and to enforce this agreement. But still, when it's very new for the society, and when you can't be sure that always the person who calls himself mediator, that he has mediation, he is a mediator, he has clue about mediation. And most important, when he has real mediative mindset, and he understands what is his role and how mediation has to be held. So in such cases, it's very important to have some kind of tools which, first of all, will provide help, but at the same time will regulate. And this brings us to another very, very sensitive question about mediators as professionals and how they can enter profession, how they can be admitted as mediators, acknowledged, recognized as mediators. And as again, we have not only globally, but probably in one jurisdiction and maybe in one organization, we have mediators who have completely different views on mediation. It's very difficult to find some way where the standards for mediators as professionals can be justifiable. And this is very, very sensitive question. And here we have to be very careful. But if we are talking about legislation again, that's very important that there has to be dialogue. This is not something which is very original, what I'm saying, but it needs to be at place. And as I said, what you are doing, hopefully it also becomes a part of this very valuable part of this kind of dialogue, maybe even virtual dialogue, but at the same time, when mediators from all over the world, they express their views. But also what I should say that these dialogues, it's mostly conversations, tete-a-tete, like individual conversations. And maybe at certain moment, it's very important to have very well moderated conversation on the topic, what mediation is. We will never reach mutual we will never reach consensus on this. But at least if we will have this kind of conversations, it will, first of all, help us to see all this wide picture and huge spectrum of different views. Hopefully, listening to each other, maybe each of us, we will find something new and understand, and we will have insights. And maybe in some cases, we will become closer to some groups. We can be more distant, but at the same time, it helps to maintain kind of development, but productive, hopefully productive development, which is really very, very important for modern mediation. Because mediation has a lots of potential, but at the same time, it can be even less used, underused, because of what is happening in the world. And many people, they really lose like this trust to such things. Because if you see so much evil around you, you don't trust anymore that something good and something more peaceful can be helpful to solve your individual problems. And this is very important. I will stop here. Maybe you have questions.
Yes, definitely questions and also discussion points. But important thing, like what you were talking about, that people lose faith in a process like this with the evil around. So for me, what I did was, for the last 2.5, almost 3 years now, no news. I don't watch the news. So maybe I create my own little bubble, but I stay positive in it, because definitely there's so much being thrown on people at all points of time. They might lose faith in people itself. So I think that's why that keeps me all right. So that's one part. Well, what you said about what is mediation. So the thing is, I in my posts put out the definition in the Singapore Convention only because that people from various countries, maybe about 30 or whatever countries, sat together, at least reached a point. So let's take from there, and nice and broad definition. I'm okay with it, because otherwise, like you said, we'll be debating mediation itself and nothing more will happen about it. So I said, okay, one thing has been done. We take that as the definition. And beyond that, yes, we can always have further discussions on it, because from the legislation perspective, I'm okay with that definition because it's broad. The whole concept of how the process is to be done, flexible, what you call it, because I tell you, Tsisana, the thing is that the word that you use for it is also important. We're not stuck with mediation, the word. In Russia, if there is a word for mediation which people connect to, but be careful that that word connects to mediation and not to the arbitration.
Something different.
Yeah, so that's why you have to be very, very careful about that, because it can change the concept totally. And we think we are connecting them with the right word, but we are not. And then their mind goes into, like you said, they should know what the process is, because if you're saying some mediators will take them into a process which is not mediation, they know nothing better, because they think that's what it's supposed to be. So the connection with the right word is, I see it from the Indian perspective. Everywhere this word panchayat will be used when mediation is spoken about. And panchayat in India, it takes decisions. It actually takes decisions for the community and actually enforces those decisions. And
which is not mediation.
Not at all. And here we have the Supreme Court of India itself putting out a training manual and connects it with the panchayat. The Chief Justice goes out and talks about mediation, connects it with the panchayat. I talked to the villager, they said the panchayat, no mediation. This is totally arbitration and forced implementation. In their mind, that is what the panchayat is. So we have to be really careful, because that will change the whole complexity of what we're trying to do. So I think that is important. But I think the important thing that you did say was that this is basic human interaction, which has got lost, and we're wanting to put it into a more structured approach, a more professional, that word you're using. Of course, I keep saying that, is it a profession? Because profession means training and certification, and that I have my reservations on that direction if it takes, because I just feel that the point being that it is someone you trust, that trust. On the other end, you're saying people might be losing trust in people. That's another thing, but they have to have that trust. And we cannot ever get to know what makes someone trust another person. We can't put criteria to it. We can't say this is what it takes to be trusted. Trust has to come from within, and whom it will come for, we also don't know, and why it will come, we will not know. So the moment we understand that, no issue, we'll know exactly this is what we have to gauge. We put this instrument in this person, yes, this person is trustworthy enough to be a mediator. But right now we're not too close to that. We can't gauge that about people. So I still feel that the people themselves, because it's their dispute, they are the right people to gauge whom they want to trust. Yes, people want to put themselves out, because the thing is that it's all word of mouth. Finally, anything like this, traditionally or today, will actually be word of mouth. And word of mouth means that that many interactions are happening which are not really happening the way they should be. If you have so many mediations, people going back, giving good feedback, then those people get identified and things progress. That did not happen, is not happening. Even you just spoke about the US or the UK example. US, Elise was there before Indrani. You met Indrani. Before that was Elise from the US. Young person starting off as a mediator. And she talks about the situation there. I mean, the court system, that's it. That is where it is limited. So if the last 50 years of saying mediation is happening in the US, it hasn't gone out of the court system, it's not a good direction for other countries at all. So some countries can't afford things to go into courts. Already they are so, I mean, I feel that even for courts, today it is that situation that things will burst, it will go totally against them. Let's put out as much as we can through mediation. There is, what other option do we have? So that's, those courts will break if that the US model is taken in countries, a lot of countries. India itself, I mean, with 300 million population, 100 million matters going into courts in the US, and 50 years of mediation you're talking about, and you say mediation, damn good process. If it is not a process used before coming to court, we can't afford 1/3 of our population number of cases going into courts. We just can't. 1.4 billion people, 1/3 of that, I mean, 400 plus million matters will break everything, because 18 million has broken it. Today, 18 million come into the courts, 18 million go out. 50 million matters are lying pending in courts in India. So, and then you say US model. We just go finish. I mean, so it has to be something else. Of course, I have my thoughts on that, which I will of course share with you. But the important thing is that for a moment, Tsisana, you have to move yourself away. Court system exists. We can't do away with that whole thing of what's happening there. But let's for a moment keep it aside. Outside the court system, how do you look at mediation developing? There is no court, no concept of court mandated, court mandatory, all those words, because that's a whole debate itself. Are there vested interests in promoting that? I have an issue with vested interest for promoting certification also, because these organizations are making huge amounts of money. They will get legislators to make this a requirement to make even more money. So, and for a moment, let's just keep the court system and everything out of that. How do you look at legislation for mediation where we don't even talk about courts? There's no concept of courts. It's just how do you want to do it? And of course, I have other points, but this part I'm really interested to get your views on. Mediation developing on a standalone basis with nothing to do with the court system.
You know what? This is good approach, but at the same time, courts still exist, and many of the societies, they are very much dependable on the courts. Or maybe we can put it differently, that sometimes advertisement of mediation is the most right place. The court is the most right place. And that's why we are talking, and you say about US, but in US, I can't say that it's only in courts, but I won't, this is for another conversation. And in Russia, it was because of different problems, because we have in Russia, for instance, at the moment when we were in the process of adopting the law, there was 27 million cases every year in the courts. And I know that in India, you have a lot of people and families who are inheriting the cases from the court. So there are different kind of reasons why we have still to consider court. But even if we just have this ideal picture that we do it without courts, which is not from my point of view.
Tsisana, today, just we won't even mention the word courts.
Let's put them on the side, but we have society, yes. But in any case, if today we want the society, people, as I said, people, they lost their ability to do it in their communities without outside help. So it means that they need some assistance for this. And then you have to deal, first of all, you have to proceed through the educational system. This is one of the main things. To educate and to just even build up this skill set with the children from very early ages. And this is not only about mediation itself, but this is about mediative mindset. This is another thing. But this is quite ideal situation. But of course, still, this should be done. This is very important for our society. But at the same time, you have to look at it from different angles, because still, having in mind that among these children with mediative mindset, if there will be at least one who is losing control, who does not adopt to this mindset, then there is a problem. You understand what I mean? But educational system, it's one of the main pillars to bring real change to the society. And of course, it does not give you immediate result, but you have to grow this. You have to grow this result, grow it from generation to generation. This is one thing. Another what you have to do, and this can be, because in many countries, there is no real civil society, well-developed civil society. The countries where there are well-developed civil societies, and that's again about critical thinking. And now what we see, what we are witnessing in the world, we can see that even very educated people considered intellectuals, very smart people, with very good attitudes and positions and very positive and human, if you ask them, and even their surrounding, but they don't see full picture. They don't see full picture at all. So that's a very difficult moment when, in any case, there should be some support of policymakers on different levels. And it depends which attitude and what kind of view to the future of the world these policymakers have, and how they want to use the human's mind. Today, it's one of the biggest challenges and problems are human minds, because they are all taken by sometimes very wrong ideas. And that's why when I say I left Russia and I stopped all my activities in Russia, it's not because when you see that what you are doing can be used under the title of something good for something opposite, completely wrong, it's better to step aside. Unfortunately, I can't struggle with the system anymore because I fought with the system for more than 15 years.
You have to tell us about that fight, Tsisana, because that's an important one to tell us later. Maybe today, later, whenever, but this...
No, but now when you see that you can't do it, because the people's minds and public opinion is already so much brainwashed and manipulated that you can't do. Why I'm saying about this with mediation and the policy making and the role of policymakers in spreading and developing mediation. So it's very also important to understand, is there real strive for mediation or there is something else behind this? So, and of course, professional groups, different professional groups, lawyers are very important, but at the same time, again, you have to understand from where these lawyers or community of lawyers are coming. Of course, without compromise in our world, it's impossible. You have to conform at certain extent, but it depends. And you have to be sure that you don't lose yourself, first of all, and that you don't lose the core idea of why you are doing this effort. So this is about professional groups and indeed communities. But it's, again, when we are talking regarding mediation, it always gets to the education in some way. Education, awareness, understanding, mindset, showing people that it could be differently than they are used to. And showing them that this is quite real to achieve such kind of results.
Well, Tsisana, yeah, you're saying something. No, what I was really wanting to get into, why I said about the courts, and let's leave it aside, because everywhere in the world today, legislation in relation to mediation is connected to the inefficiency of the judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever is coming out from it is because of that. The root of the problem is that. The other aspect that you're talking about, the way the education and the mindset and everything, that is the way it should have happened, and it should have grown and developed from that angle. But we are left in a situation where the inefficiencies of the court system is going to dictate the way legislation progresses, which will go against that development that you're talking about, because it's getting connected to the court system. Again, it is not a process which people feel is their process. We are doing, no, it's happening in the courts, is connected to the courts. And of course, the other aspect of it is free, that other aspect that gets connected to. It's all due to the inefficiency of the court system. I'm saying even enforceability. We talk about enforceability of a contract only because the inefficiency of the court. I should be able to enforce a contract. I don't need to have a settlement agreement as good as a court degree if my enforcement of a contract itself doesn't take time. So enforceability, everything is going through what the inefficiency of the court system has developed. So that's why I want to keep it aside, because that part we are not going to be able to change easily because of the, for us, the colonized mindset that you don't say anything to the judiciary. They do what they want. And that, of course, has gone into issues, major issues where justice is denied, and all those issues we'll keep having discussions on. It will waste our time. They won't change. they won't put their house in order. They'll try some other ways of going about it. And of course, this is what's happening to mediation. So I don't want to get into that. That's why I'm keeping them aside. So that's where the root of the problem is. But why I'm saying on the other side is because we can actually develop it on the other side. While this exists, it's going to create a more of a problem because it's going to come in the way of development of mediation for whatever the reasons I'm saying, because people won't experience mediation. They will experience more of forced settlement because the inefficiency of the judiciary is there. I don't want to go to that system because it takes too much time. It costs so much. Okay, so I'll settle right now. You're not happy with that. You're just settling because there's a gun on your head. So all those issues will come into mediation and will create a problem in people's mind. They will never go back happy saying, oh, that's a good process. I felt good about it, and whatever the other reason. So all those issues, we are going to be fighting against the issues which will come up due to the involvement of the judiciary in mediations in general. So that's why I'm saying just keep it aside. On the other end, we develop it on the grassroots level, be it in terms of the mindset developing, could the whole collaborative aspect, the communities itself have to be strengthened because they have broken up. The individualistic societies have developed. There are a lot of things happening there. So a lot of work has to happen there, and maybe a lot of other people will have to be maybe involved in that strengthening of societies and communities and creating that environment for mediation to come up and flourish. Yes, all that has to happen, but we have to start somewhere. So I'm saying to do that, legislation, what should it look like so that it doesn't come in the way of that development? That's why I'm keeping this other one inside.
Vikram, first of all, this is long conversation, this issue. And I just want to say, because my time is almost over, but what I want to say, that this is something where you don't need legislation. This is question about something different. And this is our deep crisis of humanity. We lost trust, first of all, in ourselves. Because when you are saying that you don't need court or any state institutions or involvement of some institutions to enforce your own decision, it's completely normal for me. If the human being decided based on his own interests and he agreed with someone, with his counterparty, that he will solve this problem in this way, he has to enforce it, he has to follow his agreement. But the problem is that, first of all, the human beings, they are already, first of all, we have court and the legal system. They already took over the society. It's not only legal assistance or legal support. Now we have law firms industry. It's an industry in most of the countries. And you can't do anything, and you think that you always have to apply or to the court or you have to run to the lawyer. Otherwise, you can't solve anything. And most of the times it's like this, because the system is structured this way already. And it's penetrated in all parts of our lives. This is one big problem. And I'm afraid we can't do anything now with this.
No, you have to stay positive. And you have to stay positive. I know every point in time, I think I'm going to make you also stop watching the news. No news for you now.
No, it's a luxury. Yes, I don't watch. I never watch. I just read usually. Yes, and another thing, what is why I'm saying that human beings, they have to get back to themselves. Maybe this already sounds very philosophical, very utopical, but at the same time, it's like this. As soon as people will get back to themselves, they will trust themselves, their own ones, and then they will feel accountable and they will feel responsible for every choice, for every decision, for every agreement. It's very easy position when you can blame court, someone else, that the life is bad.
Tsisana, the important thing, the 3 words that I haven't used up till now, which I always use in everything, almost of my sessions, is heart, soul, spirituality. That aspect of it is something which, of course, there's a whole symposium on that. I think those are things where direction that you are, in a way, putting it. So that's where I think that's an important part that you're saying.
Yes. So I hope that at least it was helpful what we exchanged today.
Yeah, I wish you did not have to keep looking at the clock while talking. That would have been even better, because what the discussion is really, I think, in the right direction. Of course, this will go on. This discussion is something which, I mean, it's not going to end soon. We'll keep having this, but I think the direction that you've taken and the things that you've spoken out are the important things which we need to work on as a society in general, as people in general, and the way, the kind of ecosystem that you want to develop. Definitely. What we did know, I wanted to discuss, but maybe you're short of time, but the artificial intelligence that you started with, of course, I feel that the way it's going, I think maybe it might be good for dispute resolution, because people can have conversations with a system which will have access. Because here we have people saying training, and they say, okay, say there's certain theoretical training. This will have access to the best in terms of content from all over the world. And you can have conversations with that machine. It might be better than going to someone who's gone to this 40-hour thing and
You
that training.
are very optimistic, I'm afraid. But this is for another time.
No, I tell you why I get connecting it to the training part, because people think they're making mediators in 40-hour factories. I'm better off that artificial intelligence does the work, because it will have a much broader view on things, rather than if you do, because if you take out the mindset out of it and you think that we can put some kind of we can train a mind to be something, I don't think it's going to happen. So
no, I'm afraid that first of all, people who feed this artificial intelligence, we can't be sure how they feed it, and we are probably at the moment when now they are already really scared that artificial intelligence can take over, and it can be get out of control.
no, I mean, what I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be. This is a broader one that artificial intelligence we're talking about. You can create small, in terms of, this is a machine, so you can give it only conflict resolution material. You don't have to give it the entire material of the entire world, all the billions of things there. You can start limiting it to that part. You can have machines doing only that part. We can do that, but right now there's no time. Tsisana, I mean, I am not short of time, but you are. So
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I hope that we will have another time
we will.
to discuss it. And I wish you more interesting conversations. And thank you very much for inviting. And it was a pleasure, and it was very interesting.
Thank you very much. And 19th, there is a workshop. If you have time, please drop in on the 19th. We just did. Now that will be a general discussion, not individual.
I don't promise, but I'll do my best.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tsisana. Pleasure speaking to you.
Have a good